This video is meant to talk through Lesson 8, Calorimetry Virtual Lab. So far in this unit, we have learned that energy is required to break bonds, and that energy is released when bonds are made. But how much energy? How can we actually measure the energy transferred in one or both of these processes? So this is just a brief introductory to calorimetry and a kind of re reframing, I guess, of some of the knowledge that we've learned in the last few lessons. So because the energy transfer involved in both bond breaking, so remember we saw bond breaking when we had ionic solids dissolving in water, and bond making, which is when we saw the ionic solids being synthesized. This involves heat or thermal energy. We can employ a method called calorimetry to measure the heat transfer. Calorimetry is the science of measuring heat. In aqueous solutions, the energy is transferred or taken away from the water. Therefore, the thermal energy transferred may be calculated using the change in water temperature itself. So we're going to take advantage of the fact that we have temperature as a quantitative measurement of energy within a substance. We're going to be taking advantage of that fact within this lesson. So within this unit, we have observed changes in thermal energy by observing changes in temperature within a closed system. And this closed system is very, very, very important. We saw this in a temperature decrease with ionic solids dissolving in water. We also saw this through an increase through the synthesis of several ionic compounds in lesson 6. The thermal energy transferred when bonds are broken or formed is referred to as enthalpy change. And we refer to enthalpy as H and enthalpy change as delta H. So this little triangle, remember, just means change. For our purposes, energy transfer will always occur within a closed system. Okay, again, this is very, very important. This is always occurring within a closed system. So there's no energy lost to kind of like the outside universe. Energy can either go from the surroundings to the system or the system to the surroundings. But overall, that system is going to have the same amount of energy. So because any energy transferred in this class will always occur within a closed system, the following relationship will be true for all of these enthalpy or energy transfers. So enthalpy change is equal to heat energy. And heat energy is something that we talked about last lesson. We really just talked about it, the math of it. So that means that we can take advantage of this fact here, and we can substitute delta H for Q. Okay, so last lesson we said that Q, heat energy, is equal to the mass times the specific heat times change in temperature. Okay, so now we can say that the enthalpy change is equal to mass times specific heat times change in temperature. And again, just as heat energy is measured in joules, we are also going to measure enthalpy change in joules as well. So we want to link this idea of change in enthalpy to the idea of endothermic or exothermic. So change in enthalpy is always relative to the energy within a system. If the system gains energy, the change in enthalpy will be positive. Okay, so positive meaning you are going up in energy. If the system loses energy, the change in enthalpy will be negative, meaning you have lost energy. So in lessons 2, 3, 4, and 5, we observed the dissolving of an ionic compound in water. A decrease in temperature of the surroundings was observed, and we labeled that as endothermic. So in an endothermic reaction, and this is in the pink down here, energy in joules is absorbed by the system from the surroundings. So we have here an endothermic process, or an endothermic reaction, where we have energy going from the surroundings, which are out here, into the system. So the system is gaining energy. Because the system is gaining energy in an endothermic reaction, delta H is going to be positive. In an exothermic reaction, we, like in the synthesis of an ionic compound, an increase in temperature of the surroundings was observed. This means that we have energy going from the system to the surroundings. So meaning that the system is losing energy. Since the system is losing energy, that means that we have a delta H that is negative, okay, that is less than 0. Okay, so something else I just want to point out with these colors, exothermic, we tend to associate exothermic with like, oh, something is getting hot. The reason why exothermic feels hot is because your hand, which is doing the sensing of feeling that it is hot, is actually receiving energy from the system, okay? If the system is losing energy and the system is pushing energy into the surroundings are going to get hotter. That's why this is shaded dark blue, because it's kind of the idea of the actual system itself is losing energy. Here, if we have an endothermic reaction, and again, your hand is touching the reaction, your hand is going to feel cold, right? That's because the system is actually sucking energy out of the surroundings. Okay, so just to kind of link these two colors with endothermic and exothermic. Okay, so the color is within the, it's in reference to the actual system. Okay, and then there are just a couple of questions down here. So explain why an increase in water temperature should result in a negative enthalpy change. Be sure to use terms system and surrounding. So again, if we have an increase in water temperature, that means that energy is going into the water, meaning that we have the system is losing energy, correct? Down here, explain why a decrease in water temperature should result in a positive enthalpy change. So again, it's kind of the same thing they're asking here in question 3.1. Okay, finally, just to kind of wrap all of these things up, an overall chemical reaction can be categorized as endothermic or exothermic based on the energy transferred into or out of the system. So you can look at the delta H for any reaction. This is information that is widely available online, and you can determine if it's endothermic or exothermic. Okay, you can also calculate it using this equation, which is something we're going to be using in these 3 pages here. But here, so we have negative delta H. Negative delta H means that energy is moving out of the system into the surroundings, so we have exothermic. If this had been a positive number, that would mean that the system is gaining energy, so that would be endothermic. Okay. And again, you have 2 questions to answer down here.